Okay, good morning. This is Tuesday, April 22nd. And this is the Natural Resources and Energy, and we are jumping back into discussion of stormwater and H481. And we have Mr. Kane here to join us. Thank you for coming back.
My pleasure. Good morning to you all. Right. So for the record, Neil Hammond, Deputy Commissioner, Department of Environmental Conservation. Thank you for having me back and taking up additional testimony on the bill. I have some prepared remarks about the newest version of the bill that has been posted. I am not sure whether you all have had a chance to dive into it.
No, because Michael's not coming until later.
Let's see. So I don't know whether my remarks are going to be premature or not. So I maybe seek your guidance.
Well, my sense is that, we were limited by Mr. Grady's schedule. We have you here now.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Knowing that we're gonna get more information from Mr. Grady later, with that caveat in mind, would still love to hear
Great.
your thoughts on it.
Thank you. So,
Mhm.
yeah, so generally speaking, we still see this bill obviously as a high priority and hopefully get it across the finish line. As because I think that our regulated communities need that. There are 3 new sections in the bill that I wanted to make reference to. And the first.
Sorry, I'm gonna interrupt you. Wait, and it's also to say that the new version is online, so we could be following on there.
I'm just gonna take it very high level for you.
Okay. Okay.
If that's okay.
Sure, yeah.
Understanding that, folks may not have had an opportunity to dive in. So there's a new section 8, which just provides a little bit of additional, things are renumbered, but provides a little bit of additional prioritization and establishes a priority that properties that are serving primary residential housing needs are the ones that are prioritized for receipt of funding under the municipal and developed lands grant programs that we've been talking about. And with the understanding that that is, the idea there is that the agency should provide some form of prioritization for residential communities, we're absolutely fine with that. If the intent of the language is to the exclusion of any other sites, we might question that because there may be an opportunity for a municipality to take on a business site or a mixed commercial residential development site that has a better nutrient reduction opportunity to it. But nonetheless, understanding the intent, and we're happy to implement on that. There's a new section 9, which expands on some language that had been in there. Senator Hardy, I think this is in your space, around sort of providing guidance to people, to regulated entities, to municipalities around the stormwater program generally and 3 acre. And so this would be now, it's a little bit longer form with some direction to create a stormwater management resource guide. Do that before 2027. We've looked at all the language in there and we're comfortable with all of it. We did provide to Ledge Council O'Grady some minor tweaks just to clarify the language and we're good with that.
Sorry, just to clarify, so the suggestions that you had are incorporated into this new draft?
They are.
Okay.
Yes, they are. One of the things I just want to say about that is, the language is very clearly on 3 acre, but I'll remind the committee that there is this category of sites that are smaller than 3 acre, but that are regulated under an MS4 community by a flow restoration plan or by a phosphorus control plan that would also fall into this. So we will not lose sight of those, even though it's not specifically referenced in the bill. And then there's a new section 10, and the new section 10 is a pretty comprehensive report requirement directed to the agency to produce a report for you all by December of this year. I have some really significant reservations about it, and I could walk through each section and explain those. But I think I'm just going to right up front ask you respectfully that we remove that section of the bill. I feel that there are several sections of it that are a little bit redundant to what will get produced by the study. The program has some very compelling other work that they're doing that is required under the general permit, including rebuilding the manual, for which this study would, or this report would conflict. I recognize that the report is seeking answers to questions, many of which we've answered, but it's hard to uncork all that at this table, right? Because it's a complex space. So I'm gonna pause there. I have more details I could talk about around section 10 and what some of our concerns and where some of the redundancies sit, but I wanted to kind of pause right here and just gauge your reaction.
I think that I want to go back to section 8. Did you have any, I know you were hoping that it was not to the exclusion of other kinds of properties, but as it is, were you suggesting any changes to the language for section 8?
No, the language here reads, before January 1, 2032, Secretary A&R shall provide to a property subject to the 3-acre stormwater permit priority in award of financing.
Mhm.
So, what I'm saying there is that our interpretation of this language will be that it's prioritization, but it's not to the exclusion of other prospective sites that a municipality could take on, because they're doing it now.
Right.
So that's the clarification.
Yes, good.
I know we have, I mean, this is the first time I'm seeing this
Yeah,
language,
same.
so, I know we haven't gone through it with Michael yet, but it doesn't. I'm not sure this is exactly what we talked about, because first of all, it says a property, and I'm wondering,
Yeah.
does that mean just one property? Could they give it to one property and does that fulfill it? And that it's not before, it's sort of ongoing, as they're doing this, they should prioritize funding to housing. Not just once before 2032. So I'm not sure this language is exactly right.
So, right, because as it's written, it's like a one-time. You
It
do-
sounds like
you
a
do one-
one-time thing, yeah, they give one grant to a housing
Oh.
thing and then it's done.
Please feel free to modify that language for pledge council, because we understood.
You understand that
Yeah, I
you've
mean,
heard us, me and others say, we just don't want to put pressure on housing at this
right,
point.
no, I understand. I mean, it would be fundamentally cute for the agency to make one award and say, well, this is-
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's what the
So
language sounds like to me,
Right,
so
right.
I guess I would want it.
Yeah.
And then, I haven't really read the language too much, but the report. I don't think a lot of this would be addressed by the committee, because the study committee is specifically talking about utility districts, stormwater utility districts. And this is some of the issues outside of the potential for stormwater utility districts, like looking at the TMDL, and I guess some of these could be put into that study, or like the orphaned stormwater systems, et cetera. But it seems to me that some of these issues are outside of the scope of that, and they're really just, hey, we want the agency to come back and tell us their recommendations on these things. And I know you have a part in that study group, the study committee, but it's a much broader group than just the agency.
I'm happy to speak to some of the other, well, all of the items in that section, if it would be helpful.
I think it would be helpful.
Sure.
Before we do that, though, I have one other question about section 8, which is taking a little bit of a step back. But if there is an HOA that does not have partnership with their municipality, the municipality doesn't want to participate, is there an opportunity for them to receive grants for construction of project?
That would fall into the developed lands grant program,
Okay,
right? And yes, the answer is yes.
Okay.
The department is building using Clean Water Fund money as a seed.
okay,
What we're calling a linked deposit program, which essentially puts dollars out. So we would offer financing,
okay,
which is what Act 76 says in
Right.
tier 3. It's possible that we can fund subsidy.
mhm,
but we certainly would be able to provide financing.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that, yes.
So that is a good point, because this is specifically under the municipal stormwater implementation program, and I think the sort of priority was both programs, like we want both programs to prioritize housing. So there are two funding sources.
There were two, yes.
Right?
Yeah, well, it does say under the municipal stormwater implementation program and under the development, so I understand those.
Oh, I
both
see.
programs.
Yes.
Okay, it's just
Yeah.
sectioned under,
We would have flagged that for you.
Okay. okay,
So, okay,
yeah, that works then, I guess.
it's interesting that it's under that heading.
Yeah. Ask Michael, he might put it there.
Okay. Thank you for that. So let's jump back to section 10.
Sure.
And, as we're going through this, we framed this as things to put in a report. If you think this is something that could be addressed in that study committee, that would be good.
Sure. So I'll go through the kind of segments of it. This is a really big, the report as we read it is very large. So, I mean, I view this as somebody doing work between now or the close of session when this is signed and the end of December or December 1st in order to pull this off for you in time. That's like a very significant effort. But let's talk about some of what's in there. So subsection 1 talks about reevaluating the allocations of the TMDL, and we talked about this in pretty deep detail with the House. The TMDL is not Vermont's TMDL, it is EPA's TMDL. So while we can noodle on it, if we do that, EPA is going to become very nervous. So they're already aware of this bill. I've been keeping them up to speed because they have a very significant interest in seeing all the components of the TMDL's reasonable assurance carried forward. So we had spoken to the House in detail about whether we explore reallocations or not, and I feel that's risky from the perspective of signaling to the federal agencies that we are backing away from one of our commitments. They're comfortable with our financing, our funding, our deferment. Like they're good in all those areas. If we look to reallocate, that necessarily means reopening. Vermont can't do that. It's EPA's TMDL now. So that's the first piece. And
This is the question, isn't there some sort of check-in or something that's happening next year in 2026? That's been, multiple people have mentioned this.
yeah, so there is, when the TMDL was I'm gonna kind of lay this all on the table for you because I understand this has been of interest. So hopefully you'll grant me 5 minutes to do this. Hopefully it's not. When the TMDL was promulgated in 2016, it was all but done. Now, bear in mind that Lake Champlain has two state jurisdictions that are both subject to federal oversight under, EPA's Clean Water Act, New York and Vermont. When EPA was going well back in history, when EPA was actions to reopen the TMDL, they were actioned by Vermont actors, and they reopened the TMDL for Vermont's watersheds and for the receiving waters of Lake Champlain. And those TMDL allocations were not binding upon New York. When the TMDL was litigated back then, one of the fundamental premise was that the TMDL was built in a way that did not account for climate change and more water and more pollution flowing into the lake. So when the TMDL was redone and all of the mathematics and all the modeling was complete, it was determined that yes, there was more nutrient flowing into the lake, but there was also more capacity for the lake to assimilate nutrients. So let me explain that in a really simple manner. You have a bathtub and it is receiving nutrients from its spigot. The bathtub has been, full to 75 to 80% under the old TMDL. Under the new TMDL, there's more water. And so the bathtub is now full to 90 to 100%. And you're not getting the commensurate amount of additional nutrient coming into the lake, which means the lake can assimilate more phosphorus under the new TMDL than the old TMDL. And when it's all mixed in there, the concentration of that phosphorus still meets standards. So what that means is when the TMDL took the capacity of the lake to receive nutrient and divvied it up into the allocations grew a little. New York State took notice of this and said, well, maybe we would like some of the allocation. We were well into it, EPA was well into it, so there was a very high level negotiation that happened above my pay grade at the time, resulted in a side letter that indicated that the states of Vermont and New York would consider reopening the TMDL in 2026. Vermont is not seeking to do that necessarily. If the state of New York is wanting us to reopen the TMDL, that side letter allows that we would do that. EPA is necessarily a party to it. And what happens for the state of Vermont, I'm being very plain with you all here, is because there's more loading capacity. If we rebalance it, some of that loading capacity goes to the state of New York. Vermont loses some of its loading capacity. Our allocations become more conservative, more constricted, which means we're going to need more phosphorus reductions as a result. We have built a pretty substantial aircraft carrier around our clean water efforts in Vermont. And, you know, if TMDL reopener happens, it happens and we will go there, but it is a very big thing. And right now, the department is operating under the state law rules of the road, the federal law rules of the road. And EPA Region 1 has not signaled any interest in pursuing the reopener at this time.
Question here, go ahead.
So I'm trying to understand all that. Are we taking credit for the projects that we've done for stormwater control?
Yes.
So that's all coming into play for it. I got a question on funding. So that you have grants available for the new housing. There was $49,999 for the permitting. Is that for all 717 sites?
Those dollars were available for all residential sites, all small business sites, all small business commercial sites, anything that SBA called a small business, any HOA, any entity. Those dollars have been fully allocated. Those are American Rescue Plan Act dollars, but they were available to all the large businesses.
But they're not anymore?
No.
So people that haven't applied, they're not even gonna get support for the permitting?
Well, we have this is why we're pursuing the funding program, the financing program that we have.
Thank you.
So there was, thank you, Senator. Obviously a lot in there, and hopefully I did that okay.
That's helpful. Thank you. It's good to have that context.
Yeah.
Move on to number 2.
Sure. So in number 2, essentially, we're looking at, you know, providing a comparison of Vermont stormwater programs and national stormwater programs, which is a pretty big endeavor, but I want to communicate to you all that Vermont has actually been in with other states since the 2000s building our stormwater management program. Understand that stormwater is implemented under the Clean Water Act, and it's either implemented by EPA in states that aren't delegated or operated by the state in states that are delegated. Vermont. And we carry forward EPA's requirements and we apply those to all additional requirements that are needed under our TMDLs. So if we didn't have the TMDL, EPA's only requirement for stormwater would be within the MS4 communities. But we do have TMDLs. We've had them for a long time. And so stormwater then applies to development in all of our watersheds in Vermont because it's good for water quality. But the municipal roads general permit and the 3-acre permit are both expressions of what EPA would call residual designation authority. If EPA were running the show in Vermont and we weren't, and they saw the need to find the phosphorus that they need to from all of the from all of the sectors. They would be looking at municipal roads, they would be looking at residual designation, 3 acre sites, something like that. So that is why we did that, going way back in the day. Starting in the mid-2000s, so you may have spoken to Director Peter Flom from our department on other matters, fluoride, I think, this year. Peter Flom was the stormwater program manager years ago, then division director for the watershed management program years ago, and was a very important agent nationally in working with the Association of Clean Water Administrators to create harmonized national scale stormwater. So we could go and we could certainly look to other states and what they do, but we are already doing many things that other states do. Further, that stormwater is really all about practices, and I think you're going to hear from a designer during this session. Those practices are embedded in the stormwater manual, and the stormwater manual talks about all the things that you need to do to reduce flow, to reduce runoff, to reduce erosion, groundwater, reinfiltration, all of those things. Our first stormwater manual was done by the Center for Watershed Protection many years ago. That's a national scale, very well recognized stormwater organization. When we redid the stormwater manual for the Vermont Clean Water Act, it was done by Stone Environmental, also with a local firm, but with national footprint. So we really are already consistent nationally with practices and programs. So those are all the reasons why, I mean, we could report back to you, do a long form sort of policy report on stormwater management, but our programs have grown up doing that. In subsection 3, subsection 3 talks about sort of streamlining permitting and I think gets a little bit around the issues that Green Mountain Water Environment have brought up around coincident applications. Understand that from a permit fee perspective, we already allow that municipalities that are taking on sites are waiving the additional permit fees that would layer on from multiple permit programs. For the reasons Kevin Burke and Terry Purcell explained, we have separate stormwater permitting programs in place. This dialogue may be a dialogue we could defer to the study committee, but would rather not get into a large analysis of this as part of a report that's necessary by December 1st. And then subsection 4 is about the upstream contributing properties. And I think this is already in my mind, this is already contemplated with the regional stormwater utility study committee, because one of the things we're going to look at there is the ability of the regional stormwater utility to look at other revenue mechanisms besides simply looking at the affected home. And are there other fair methods to levy fees from a broader scope of Vermonters in order to cover the costs of these high cost interventions in smaller neighborhoods. So those are the 4 sections, and that's kind of where that's kind of where the department is. I really do request that we please not do a major report by December 1st, 2025. My team is extremely busy already.
Thank you. Hearing you on that, and we're going to take that into account as we move forward. So thank you. We do have to move on to another witness, but thank you so much, and let's stay in touch.
Yeah, very good.
Okay.
I'm available the rest of the week, although it have to be remote, but not Friday because I'm meeting with this good senator down in his district. So
Oh, very good.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, and we are joined by Snre Wolf, who I understand does some of this work. So welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I will provide a brief introduction because I'm new to you folks. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Vermont. I'm the president of Stevens and Associates here at Attleboro, Vermont. I've been specializing in stormwater for the 15 years of my career across the United States, and specifically, I have been designing and permitting stormwater in the state of Vermont for the last 9.5 years. The clients that I work with are primarily school campuses, medical campuses, industrial campuses, municipalities, multifamily housing. I do work with some residential developers and earth resource folks, but the majority of my work is commercial and not in the single family residential realm. I do not have specific comments, as your previous witness does, on your proposed legislation, but rather I'd like to share the perspective of my clients and that I see in Southern Vermont, and open to answering any questions you might have. In Southern Vermont, we are outside of the Lake McLean and Lake Nefer-Magog watersheds, and so we're not subject to the limits that were previously being discussed, which puts us in a unique situation. We have some more flexibility than the state of Champlain Valley does. But we do still have some unique issues around orphan stormwater permits, and we don't have easy access to funding or mechanisms for stormwater utilities to help address them. We saw a boom of development in the 70s and 80s. There were development agreements put together, and sometimes there were legal entities that supported these development agreements to help support stormwater efforts. Over the decades, many of these development agreements have been forgotten, neglected. Many of these legal entities have been abandoned and are now defunct. Many of the developers have gone bankrupt and no longer exist, which means we have these orphan stormwater permits that aren't being addressed, stormwater systems that aren't being maintained. Within the Lake Champlain watershed, they have the ability to have a stormwater utility to help address some of these orphan stormwater utility or stormwater systems and have a mechanism to try to address them. Outside in Southern Vermont, we don't have as clear a path to having access to a stormwater utility. And I just want to take a moment and recognize that a stormwater utility is not the appropriate solution for every town, and be very clear that's not what I'm suggesting. But I do want to say that many towns would like to have a clearer path or opportunity to access that, especially outside of the MS4 process. Currently, with the MS4, or excuse me, the MRGP, the Municipal Roads General Permit, many of the municipalities have highway programs that are beginning to understand and work with stormwater maintenance and stormwater permitting. And there's a significant amount of overlap between the highway department's sort of jurisdiction and stormwater maintenance. And that means that many of these towns, especially the larger towns, are in a position where they have the potential capacity to support creating a stormwater utility at the municipal level. Much like we have seen municipal water and sewer do. And just like municipal water and sewer is not the appropriate answer for every town in Vermont, it is the appropriate answer for some towns, and they should have that opportunity. So my request for your consideration is to make sure that there's an opportunity for towns outside of Lake Champlain and Lake Nefer-Magog to have access to funding to support dealing with orphan stormwater permits and to pursue stormwater utilities outside of the MS4 process. And that we keep looking at our developed properties as properties that we need to address, and that we do not abandon the 3-acre
Great, thank you so much. Any questions for Ms. Wolf?
Yeah, actually.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
So as it stands right now, I wanna make sure I understand that you don't think storm water utility would work for your part of the state, is that what you said, or you do? I'm sorry, I wasn't clear about that.
I do think it's appropriate for some towns in southern Vermont. And I want to make sure there's an avenue for that.
Got it. But what you're asking for is funding to deal with orphan permits that are not part of the utility and are also not in the watersheds that are subject to a TMDL.
So correct, the majority of my work is outside of the TMDL watersheds. And so we have a lot of orphan stormwater permits that have no mechanism of support right now because there's no utilities, there are no stormwater utilities outside of the MS4 process. So having a municipal or regional stormwater utility would help provide a mechanism to addressing orphan stormwater permits. So I guess I'm broadly asking, the primary issue is the orphan stormwater permits. Having an avenue to either a municipal or potentially regional stormwater utility would help provide a mechanism to address orphan stormwater permits. But funding directly to orphan stormwater permits would also be acceptable to me.
Got it, okay, thank you.
One question for you about that, maybe this is a question for Mr. Kamen, I'm not sure, in terms of. Just thinking about the funding that, I guess I'm not aware of funding that exists in general right now from the state for municipalities to set up a stormwater utility, does that exist? Yes, like.
Yes, that does exist,
What
so
does this, okay,
agency of administration offers, or had in any case, through the Clean Water Fund, offered $25,000 a year for the first 5 years of operation.
okay,
For the creation of the stormwater utility, and a number of the MS4s went forward and did that.
and is that restricted by location?
I do not believe so.
Okay.
It's a tough lift for an individual municipality to create its own stormwater utility. That's why the value of the regional study.
Right. Yeah, this is something that I had been working on while I was mayor of Montpelier. We got pretty close. And then I stepped down and then there was a flood. And so there, it was just not moving forward as I understand it, but I definitely see the value. So thank you for raising that. Yeah, and also, so you're thinking that a stormwater utility at the municipal or regional level would be useful?
I think so, mostly because I don't see an alternative way to deal with the orphan stormwater permits that we have right now. You know, by and large, they just get ignored. They become sort of a millstone around a property. That means then the property can't move forward with any future development.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time to come speak to us.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, so we're gonna be adjourning at 11:30 today, so a little bit of a shorter timeline than normal. But we have our legislative council and a new draft, which we have sort of been speaking about a little bit, Mr. Kamen, as he had some thoughts on it. So we've dipped our toes in this. I'd love to go through it.
So would you like me to just go through changes?
Yes, that would be great.
This is micrograding with legislative council. You should have draft number 381 with the 421 date and 8:17 a.m. timestamp. So the first changes are on page 10 and 11. You will see this is section 8. This section had originally been in the bill, but only with the subsection A, which would put $5 million from the Clean Water Fund fiscal year 2027. In subsection B, you had wanted that the awards from the Municipal Stormwater Implementation Program and the Development Plans Implementation Program have a priority, give priority to residential housing use as primary residence. So that is what it would be. So for a 3-acre property, it would get priority in award of financing, the municipal stormwater implementation and the development implementation program. When residential housing use primary residences are located on the property.
So you think we have some thoughts on this? Yes, Senator Hardy.
Yeah, so before you came in, we were talking about this language and it may be just the way it's phrased, but it sounds like it's provide to a property, so they give one property a grant, then that would meet it.
So there's a provision in Title I says the singular is plural and plural is singular.
Really? I think that. That's why,
I've heard him say this.
that blows my mind too.
I mean,
I want that too, okay.
I was gonna make a suggestion that we move,
You could say property subject to the 3 acre. For owners of property subject to the 3 acres.
I mean, I was gonna say, she'll prioritize properties.
Yeah,
I'm like, but, knowing that the plural is singular and singular is plural, I will look to you as to whether or not you think it is
I mean, I
necessary.
think if you want clarity, I think. For clarity. So the secretary shall prioritize awards
Yes.
from the municipal stormwater implementation program and the development implementation program. To properties subject to the 3 acre stormwater permit when residential housing uses primary residences are located on the property.
Yeah, that's it for me, but yeah.
yeah, I think so, but I do wanna bring up a question that sort of came up when we were talking with Neil about. He brought up the possibility that there may be a property that's not residential, but that provides a greater decrease in phosphorus, like bigger bang for the buck in terms of the phosphorus, and we would want them to be able to not just do housing, you know what I mean, that they have this discretion to also
Or
prioritize.
this is just a priority, it's not a prohibition of funding other projects.
But this would not mean that they could, if they got 10 applications, they had money for 5 of them. And 7 of them are housing, that wouldn't mean that they have to do all 5 grants to housing, right?
This is your request, what is your intent?
I think that's not necessarily our intent if all the money goes to housing, it's just that that should be something they take into consideration when they're making their priorities. And that they, right, or,
Yeah, I think that's fair, because we do want a better bang in the buck if we can. So perhaps she'll make funding these kinds of awards a priority. So it's not necessarily the highest priority,
yeah, I mean, I don't
maybe
know.
it's not.
There's so many priorities,
Well, unless, I mean, Mr. Kamen, you were interpreting this language to say that it would not be to the exclusion of these other kinds of projects.
That's,
So, I don't know if we need to change for you to,
well, that's so Neil Cannon for the record, Deputy Commissioner DEC, just in case we're in a different piece of the tape now. That is why I put that into the record. Our interpretation of this statutory language, if we were to receive it or implement on it, would be that we would provide some points that would plus up a housing, a project that served primary residential housing over a project that supported, I don't know, a Sunoco or something.
right, so that it's has a higher number of points on your scoring system.
got it, okay.
That is, yes,
That's how you would interpret it, that's exactly what I
Yes.
first see that, same, yeah, okay.
Right, so I'm not cheap.
And if the plural thing is not a problem, then I guess.
Okay, I'll work on it a little bit. I won't totally.
Thanks, yeah.
Sure. Moving on, page 11, line 7, section 9, this is the public resource guide for stormwater management for January 127. Secretary publishes the guide, an appointed person subject to stormwater permitting, stormwater operating permits and NBSA 1264, and that's all of them. It's not just 3 acre, it's not just operating. Well, it does say operating, but So the state operating permit of 3 acre with information and resources related to complying with and paying for stormwater permitting requirements. Guide shall be user friendly, designed to encourage the public to engage with A&R and finding solutions. The guide shall summarize the statutory requirements for stormwater permits with specific emphasis on 3 acre permit, including why the permits are required. Recommend available cost-effective measures for how available practical cost-effective measures for how persons subject to permits can address parcel-based issues, including the lack of a HOA, the student permitting responsibility, lack of available property to implement stormwater management, including whether and how a person subject to stormwater permits can implement off-site offset project to comply. How to address or manage stormwater runoff from other stormwater systems and any stormwater systems subject to permanent minimum. Then recommend resources where funding for compliance with stormwater permitting may be accessed or applied for, including how to apply for assistance from A&R. Provide contact at A&R that can assist persons with stormwater subject to stormwater permitting by answering questions, providing referrals, creative or alternative solutions to achieve permit compliance, and recommending available financial resources. A&R submits a copy of the guide to you. Secretary shall also make it available free of cost to the public to agency website.
You are okay with all that?
And we are.
I just want to say thank you for crafting all of this.
Yeah.
This is great.
Okay. Section 10, I had more problems with. So
Fair enough.
no doubt I'm gonna be told it's great.
I have an adjective for you.
On or before December 1, 2025. No. A&R shall submit to you a report regarding the improvement of stormwater regulation in the state. It includes a review of the phosphorus load allocation under the Lake Champlain TMDL. Assess whether phosphorus load reductions attributed to stormwater regulation should be reallocated to other sectors to improve the equity and effectiveness of the TMDL. Including whether permit requirements addressing stormwater runoff should be staggered or phased in order to achieve greater phosphorus reduction. Now that is largely from my notes. And so I just wanted to see if that reflects your intent.
Thank you. I have some questions again for Mr. Kamen about this section. I feel like I'm understanding the difficulty that this puts the state in terms of reviewing the load allocations. I get that. I would be okay with taking that out. I'm wondering about this last part though, about having some aspects be staggered or phased. Do you have any thoughts about, like, within the allocations that we have, can we be either prioritizing or staggering either sites that are easier to get done, or types of properties, etc.?
Sure, so this all boils into the sort of deadline for the TMDL itself, which is 2036. So what we're doing by extending the application deadlines by the couple of years that we're essentially signaling to folks that they have to be constructed by 2033. So it's a fairly tight window. EPA, as I spoke to you earlier, I've been in contact with them, they noticed that. They're okay.
Yeah.
Anything that gets us beyond 2036 is going to be problematic
So
for them.
So what I'm hearing is that there's not a lot of space for staggering.
I think that's, I mean, from a financing perspective, we can get some financing stood up this year with the new clean water fund allocations. It takes us a year to study up on the regional stormwater utility. It takes us one session to put it into place. It takes us 1 year to put it on the ground. Like, this is my experience with the clean water service providers. It took us 2 years to get them on the ground. Depends the structure of it and what comes out of the committee. So it's just a tight timeline, right?
Okay, thank you, yes, Ben.
And it does sound like things actually are staggered already. I mean, they have been staggered all along and in that not everything has gotten done at once. Everything's sort of like happening iteratively.
You know, in a way, sort of, if we step back to the larger perspective of the overall
Yeah,
TMDL and clean water implementation, all wastewater, all stormwater, all one point source. Yes, we are certainly looking for the best bang for the buck first. In wastewater, there are triggers. Until you reach 80% of your allocation, you don't need to go and redo your permit to meet the Village Champlain TMDL. Things like that are already built in, so.
yeah,
I don't want to be Mr. No, right?
No,
I'm very interested in creative solutions. It's
you just said yes to that big
Right.
consumer, thing, so I feel like you're trying, but that's, I appreciate that.
So you'll know.
What's that?
Who knows?
No, I just one note today. 2 yeses, 1 note.
So just to jump ahead a little bit, what we had talked about was that some of the points here, particularly 3 and 4, may be suitable for the other study. But this, so all that is to say, I'm wondering if we want to do this report or if it just looks significantly different. Either way, I am okay with taking out number thoughts on this.
Yeah, I'm okay with what you just said about putting 3 and 4 in the study. I would wanna look at that language to see, because it seems to me like that is specifically about stormwater utilities. And we might wanna sort of tweak that language just to make sure it fits 3 and 4.
So I wanted to say that just to put context around, like, are we gonna do a report? Not super sure at this point, but let's continue. Let's talk about number 2.
So that would be a summary of how other states regulate stormwater, including whether other states regulate stormwater in the regional, county, or municipal government, and whether those states that regulate at the regional or county level achieve greater efficiencies and equitable regulation due to the ability to improve efficiency of regulation. I just want to stop there. Western Kentucky University publishes an inventory of the stormwater utilities that are in the state every couple of years. I was looking at the 2021 inventory yesterday. There's over 2,000 utilities in the US. Most of them are municipally based, but there are definitely regional and or watershed based districts. And the density of them is really all over. Minnesota has a ton, Pennsylvania has a ton, California has a ton. They're largely non-existent in certain deep states. But I don't know if you want to focus then on certain aspects or certain types.
Seems to me that this 1A could be put in that A and C could be put in the other study. Because those are talking about,
I wondered if C was not already covered somehow in the study.
urban stormwater systems, is that kind of this question?
To an extent it is. Environment study.
Yeah, because if it is, if we could frame it as how other states, regional or watershed wide stormwater utilities deal with orphan stormwater systems, that would just put it in the context of a regionalized stormwater utility.
Yeah, I think maybe just changing the name of that study committee.
I'm sorry, what?
The name of the study committee,
What are you thinking?
study committee on. stormwater management and the creation of stormwater utility districts. Because then we could add questions that are not necessarily about utilities.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay.
Okay.
It's like some version of A and C. Uh-oh, Neil's bobbling his head.
That seems okay with you.
We can live with that? Is that what that bobble means?
Okay.
And then the others are just not in anything. E and D are gone.
Yeah, I think so. I mean. D is kind of a catch-all
Yep.
anyway, so,
Yeah.
and then B. Is specific to TMDL, so.
And it sounds like there's a lot of, as you said, there's shared information anyway, as these things have grown up. So,
And then do you want the streamlining language, or does that get struck as well?
number 3.
And, yes,
well, we, sounded like there was some space to consider how these things might be further streamlined. Is that a fair characterization, Mr. Freeman?
I think the concern embedded in this clause is the sort of layering of permits one on top of the other. And not as much about the application process for the fees levied, especially since, as I said, we'll waive fees for the layered
Right.
projects when they're taken on by municipalities. We're, from a permit application perspective, I mean, we're constantly looking at that, yes, with the state, so it's slowly being shifted to Snre, but we do make improvements over time. From a business process perspective, regularly, based on things that come up, including 3-acre permit obtainment ARPA assistance that I told you about, which caused a big kind of shift in how we accounted, so. We don't think this is particularly necessary.
But some of the people on the ground.
Yeah. And especially like if this is something that you all are kind of working on continually anyway, so perhaps it would not be terrible to have some kind of a review or some kind of look into if anything further can be done. Yeah, okay.
Jack,
Yeah,
I'm mindful of the team's capacity to
Yeah.
implement the full suite of things that are now in this section, in this draft.
Okay,
And want to produce the items and outcomes that are gonna be the best
yeah,
for.
Well, this would be part of this, if we're talking about moving it.
so yeah, moving it to the study,
Yeah,
right, so,
um,
well, let's pin that one and think about it a little bit.
so don't move streamlining to the study as of yet.
Right. Yes. And number 4,
This is really about the upstream draining into the regulated 3-acre. You have that already in the resource guide. I don't know if that's gonna be fully addressed in regional utility. There is language about how to assess fees or charges, so all landowners have equitable approaches to regional level revenue raising.
perhaps where it says in something about equitable, I'm not looking at the in that paragraph there, perhaps we could say including
yeah,
how to address stormwater runoff from upstream properties contributing to stormwater.
Where are you?
I'm taking that language from 4, and in that paragraph you were just reading from, because it mentions equitable
paragraph D,
yeah. But
or
Page 18 paragraph.
there are a couple that say equitable approach.
Yeah,
yeah, wherever it's okay, review.
okay, I think it works indeed.
Yeah, I mean, say, yeah, including. How to, recommendations for how to address. Upstream properties contributing.
I think that the streamlining permits language could be. We could put something like whether further streamlining of stormwater permits is achievable or viable or something like that, and just add it to one of the questions that the study could be looked at.
So it's just a yes or no, not.
And they can get a presentation by.
Yeah.
DEC, and DEC can say, this is all the things we've done, and they can say, oh, that's great, or they can say, what about this thing? Cause we did get testimony from people who were like, well, we have this permit, and then this permit, and then this permit. And to me, I'll just speak for myself, a layperson who doesn't deal with this, sound like a lot of layered permits. But maybe, it's not, I don't know.
I feel like that's a good middle ground to say, which to say whether.
Okay.
Further streamlining would be useful.
And I know it's.
Yes.
Yeah, and part of what we're talking about is permitting redundancies,
Yeah.
and I wonder if we actually wanna say that as well.
I mean, you could, but remember, many of these permits, or several of them, are federally required.
Yeah. Okay,
Mhm.
Yeah.
And as for multi-sector, construction, general, wastewater treatment. They're all federally required,
Mhm. Okay.
and then arguably 3 acres. Now federally required under the TMDL,
Mhm.
so.
Okay, any other changes that we need to walk through?
No,
Okay, and I'm wondering about section 14, the very last, looks like it's a little bit of highlighting there, but that might.
oh, there's the date, sorry about that.
No, that's fine.
So changing the clean water fund priority. That, remember how you were giving priority from the
Right.
developers. You wanted that to sunset, and that sunset was 2032.
Okay, great. Okay, I feel like we are really close to being done with this. And we did send you an invitation for tomorrow, so we'll check into hopefully see if we can get you for tomorrow.
I don't know.
Okay, understood. But I hoping we can get a clean or a new version of this with these changes we just talked about, and then hopefully we'll be ready for a vote. Very soon. So thank you, Mr. Kamen. Thank you, Michael O'Grady, for putting this all together and dropping something out of your notes. I feel like that was a lot to put together as we were finding.